Hello everyone, how's it going? So Amazon released the first part or the first set of short stories for Secret Level. It's this nerd culture game and centered series of short stories based on popular IPs and franchises like Dungeons and Dragons, Mega Man, Armored Core. And I watched the entire thing. I wanted to do a review, but I got sidetracked, so I'm just going to do it right now. Now, we're going to go through the episodes, and I'm just going to give you my points of what I thought of them. So the first episode was the Dungeons and Dragons episode, and it's a niche fantasy story. Basically, they find this kid who's going to be sacrificed to this dragon deity, and they're trying to save his life with another dragon trying to basically take the curse out of him. It's your basic D&D story: classes, functions, mages, warrior, paladins, and so on. And it's a good story. Like, it's decent enough. A lot of these stories are really basic, but they get the point across. Eventually they become a whole party and they have to fight the big boss at the end, and it ends really abruptly. Like, this has incredible CGI. Like, you would think it's something out of Lord of the Rings. I'm still surprised that holds up to this day, but the dragon looks absolutely incredible. Like, the CGI department for these short stories definitely nailed every single episode, even the ones that I didn't really care for. But here, it is absolutely brilliant. One of the best dragons I've ever seen. And I really hope they do continue this story in particular, because it leaves on a high cliffhanger. And I know that's the point of the short story, but maybe they can like subvert us and actually give us the conclusion with the final boss fight. But regardless, it kind of leaves you hanging. And if you're one of those people who doesn't like the idea of them just like the Sopranos ending, where they just blank out with no really full conclusion, this is probably not going to be a good episode for you. But it's decent enough with its CGI, great battles, epic content. It's a lot of flash and a lot of flair put into it. Next up, we have Shifu. This is basically the game. Literally, they just retell the game in a very short story. So it starts off with an old woman sharing her dumplings with a young man. We all know who he is. I'm trying to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, but basically she's saying that she spent her entire life perfecting this recipe, and that's why it tastes so good. And then he decides to go on his campaign to take revenge, and it's very graphic, extremely well done and choreographed. The fights are incredible, and they captured the essence of Shifu, the idea that you fail, come back, try again, learn from your mistakes, and keep pushing forward. And it ends with him coming back to the dumpling stand, and the lady mistaken him for the original guy, because this is taking place over the course of one night actually, and she thinks he's the granddad. And then it takes her a second to realize, wait, this is the same guy based on his mannerisms. And she asked him, was it worth it? And he was just like, he doesn't know. And it's a very poetic ending, and it captures the essence of the game very well. It's basically the entire game condensed into a little package. Not the entire story of the game, but enough of it that you get the idea of it. Next up, we have New World. Never played New World, but this is also a classic story. So basically, a king comes onto this land hoping to conquer it. He fails. His entire people are killed by a storm. He washes up on the island, and apparently he's immortal. He challenges the ruler of this land, gets his butt kicked. He keeps doing it over and over, thinking it's divine intervention, until eventually they tell him, no one can die on this island. You're immortal. And he's wondering, why does he keep losing? Because he's not just losing to the king, he's losing to every single person. And the only person to survive who still treats him like royalty tells him straight to his face, hey, they let you win. You're not good at anything. You suck at everything. Even though you're this big, bolster, hulking guy. He looks like freaking Chris Evans. It's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he does a great job. And he still rejects this notion, rejects the only person who even reaches out to be his friend. Like, this guy's not just a servant. He actually does care about him. But then he decides to go on this campaign to become this dark, powerful entity, still fails, and then the king just pities him. He's just like, you want a crown? Here you go. And instead of trying to learn from that, he takes the crown only to realize that his only friend is also gone. Eventually he becomes a better person, gives his friend a gift, and starts his new life as just living on this island. They even have the famous Arnold Schwarzenegger meme clap thing. So it's a good episode, very well done, classic story, heartfelt, nothing truly special about it. CGI is good. I know I'm saying that a lot, but a lot of these stories follow that, with the exception, I would say, one of them. So let's move on to Unreal Tournament. Now this is basically an AI mining robot, has gained sentience. He sees that his people are being destroyed or not being treated with respect. He rebels, and to quash this rebellion, because now people are aware of this, like similar to Detroit Become Human, they want to execute them publicly in Unreal Tournament, this arena-based combat. And it's really well done. It's graphic, it's violent. The robots slowly learn from their combat challenges as he infects more robots. They become their own individual person as they start to sacrifice themselves for him. Well, it's technically an it, but I'm going to call him him. And eventually he wins. He beats their top warrior. He gains the appeal of everyone in the audience. The humans are on his side, and eventually he incites a revolution. It's a really well done episode, captures the Unreal Tournament energy, and it's really well choreographed with the weapons, the combat, and eventually the ending really hits the home. Like, I loved how I love the robot design. It's absolutely brilliant. And the way he infects them, his eyes turn green, similar to how deviants would infect one another, and they would have, well, I don't remember the deviants had anything that could particularly tell them apart from others, but they did have like a cinematic from the deviants' perspective as they break their clothing. But for this, well done. I would say most of these episodes are really well done. Next up, we have the Warhammer one. And this one is both my most, the one I hated the most and the one I loved the most. And the reason for that is because we're getting a live action Warhammer 40k, and Space Marine 2, I absolutely love that game. That's what got me into Warhammer. I'm starting to like look up information and everything. I love the Blood Angels. That's kind of my group now. But for this, the reason why I hate it is because the CGI is just, it is so good. Like, there is no way in hell they're going to be able to capture this in live action. Like, the second that dawned on me, I was like, the opening scene for this just shows you how freaking dangerous these Space Marines are. Like, you did get that in Space Marine 2, where you could just ram yourself through enemies who are not wearing this armor, or like just normal people. But in this, they really showcase this. They show how utterly pathetic regular people are to these Space Marines. 4 of them just walk up, and it's like, it's literally like the Bison meme. Like, this is I can't quote it from memory, but you know what I'm saying, the Bison meme, where he's like, for me, it was Tuesday. Like, literally, they just walk up and just kill them like they're nothing, and they are nothing. They literally have no chance. Of course, this does bridge into Space Marine 2, where Titus, Chaos, like the Chaos scene, oh my god, it is, like, that's why I hate and love this episode, is because there is no way they're going to capture this in live action without spending over $1 billion. Like, granted, they did, I would say, well, the rumors are that Rings of Power may cross that threshold, and that show sucks. But for this, there's no way they're going to dedicate that to Warhammer. At least, I don't think they will. They already did that for one show. I don't think they're going to do it for this show, but there's no way they're going to be able to capture what was shown on this. It is so good into live action. That's why I love and hate this episode. You're going to just be like, God, there's no way to live action. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe future me will be wrong and I'll be eating my words, but when you watch this, it is a poetic moment of blood, gore, visceral, just everything I loved about 40k made for me to just say, you know what, I'm a fan now. Now, the Pac-Man episode. This is going to be one of the most divisive episodes, I feel like, for a lot of people. They basically turned this into a survival horror. And when I watched this episode, I didn't even know it was Pac-Man. Literally, I watched these episodes blind because I wanted to see if I can pick up on this stuff. And when I watched this episode, I want to give them credit. They tried something incredible. I loved it. Like, I thought they did something really creative. It's basically what Video Game Donkey said about how Pac-Man was the first survival horror game, or Terminal Montage, I believe that's his name, the one who does those animated shorts like with Speedrun and Mario, with his interpretation of Pac-Man. I feel like whoever wrote this episode literally are fans of that, like Video Game Donkey saying that and the Terminal Montage thing, because this one is a survival horror experience, and it's so different. Like, I can't really describe it without spoiling it, but basically Pac-Man is the bad guy, and they made the labyrinth an actual labyrinth. Like, he's trying to escape, and his primary goal is to just escape, and the motto they use is eat or be eaten. Eat or be eaten. It's a very artistic interpretation of Pac-Man, and like I said, this is either going to be something you hate or you love. Like, I don't feel like there's going to be a middle ground for this, but this one I really liked just because it was so creative, and it really left me guessing at the end. Like, it's a really good ending that, unlike the D&D episode, it is a loop, basically. And they do it in such a very effective way that you can believe, like, this is just going to keep happening in different ways. Like Groundhog Day, basically, or that episode of Supernatural where Sam constantly keeps going back in time or reliving Dean's death. So, for this one, definitely a good episode, but it's going to be a personal interpretation of whether you're going to like it or hate it. Now, Crossfire. When I watched this, I thought it was Battlefield. Like, it was literally Battlefield 4, the Chinese level with the monsoon, where you go into their native homeland and the storm is, like, whacking everything above. Even has, like, a map that resembles Battlefield 2042, only with the Battlefield 4 color scheme with the monsoon and the bluish hues. Like, I didn't even know this was... I've never played Crossfire, never really cared for it, but this, literally, you could swap this out with Battlefield, and I feel like you would get the same thing. It's your generic military shooter. Literally, you can put this into a Call of Duty game or a Battlefield game and say it's a campaign, and I feel like no one would be the wiser. Literally, it's just two teams trying to extract an VIP, and both sides think they're the good guys. Like, both of them, well, it's not both sides think they're the good guys, it's more like neither side is the bad guy. They're just there to do a mission, basically. Like, again, with Battlefield, like, you're just there to do a mission. That's your job. Well, Battlefield is more about good versus evil, but it's like when you play a multiplayer match. It's like, you're there to do the mission. So in this case, I think this would be the lowest rated one for me, because it's literally just a generic military story. Nothing really exciting about it. Like, I actually felt like it was quite boring. Yeah, there's a lot of, like, traditional action, 90s movie action you'll see here, but I didn't really care for the characters. I kind of just waited for it to go through the motions. I was more or less like, I don't know the right word to describe it, like blank watching, if you can say that, where you're watching and processing everything you're seeing, but you're kind of just, you're just watching it for the sake of watching it. And by the end, it's not a bad episode. I'm not trying to say it's bad. It's just like, it goes through the motions. And it's like coming off from the Pac-Man episode to this, I feel like it's that's what really did it. If they swapped the episodes and put this one first, I'd probably feel like it's a lot more enjoyable, especially with the I believe, well, if they put this right next to the Unreal Tournament one, I feel like it would have been a little more better for me. But the fact this came after Warhammer and especially Pac-Man, yeah, it definitely just falls flat in comparison to Warhammer's just utter gore and brutality and just aesthetics, and the creativity of the Pac-Man episode. It's just simply like, it can't compete. Now we have the Armored Core episode with Keanu Reeves. This one, I loved Armored Core 6. It was one of my favorite games of, I believe it came out in 2023. Oh my god, I'm getting to that point where I don't really recognize years and dates anymore because I'm old. But Armored Core, really good episode. Basically, Keanu thinks he's special, that no one is like him. He ends up going into a mission that turns out to be something entirely different. And to me, it really highlights the heartlessness of Armored Core. Like, From Software games, it's not about good versus evil. It's more or less there's an ending, and some people live and some people die. That's basically it. That's kind of how I've played, like, From Software games, from Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring. I never finished Sekiro, and I never played Dark Souls 2, so can't speak for that, but that's kind of what this episode's about. Like, Keanu is not a bad guy, but he's also not a good guy. He's, I think, insane, but the fight scenes for this are absolutely brilliant. Definitely It kept me more awake than Crossfire, but the ending of this episode I felt really highlights the whole idea of a From Software game. You're not the good guy. You're just a character within this world, and with Keanu Reeves' character, it's the same situation. He is not the good guy. He may be the protagonist of this story, but he's just another person in this story, just living his life. I won't go... the combat itself is really well done. They showcase what's going on in the pilot seat inside one of these armored cores, and you see like the viscera and how much of your body goes through the horrifying process. Because as far as I can tell, like, I've only seen Josh Drive Hayes' video on Armored Core 1. I saw videos on Armored Core, all the other Armored Core games, but as far as I can tell, they don't really show what goes in the pilot seat, like what really goes on in that seat. And this episode does showcase that, and the brutality that it puts on the human body to pilot one of these things. Because I've always seen them as more like Zoids, or what's another, like, I know a lot of people will say Gundam, but I've never watched Gundam, so I'll just use Zoids as an example. This here, they really just highlight, or Zone of the Enders, but here they really showcase the amount of stress it puts on the body to pilot one of these things. Like, it's not just to be a good pilot, you also need to have the mental and physical fortitude that deal with the damages that come for piloting one of these armored cores, and I feel like that episode really highlights that. And if we get an Armored Core 7, which I really hope we do, it will give me a brand new perspective on that, or at least one day they can actually show us inside the Armored Core. But this year, really well done, good. So the only real episode that I kind of just watched blankly would be the Crossfire episode. I feel like this could have been a Battlefield episode and no one would know the difference, but I really enjoyed this. Like, I would give it like a solid 8 out of 10. Like, because mostly these are just short stories meant to just whet your appetite. They're not meant to be full, you know, huge episodes meant to like lead to something greater. Like, this is an ancient thing, but Cartoon Network, I believe, or Nickelodeon, no, it was definitely Cartoon Network, used to have this thing called What a Cartoon, where a bunch of artists and cartoon designers would submit cartoons to this program, and whatever got the most popularity would eventually become major shows within their catalog. Like Courage the Cowardly Dog started off on What a Cartoon. So this is not meant to be like something that would lead to something bigger, even though the Warhammer thing is going to be a live action show, but I don't think they're going to continue this. I think it's going to be a different thing with that system, but this one definitely is connected to Space Marine with Titus. Titus is in this episode. I won't say in what degree, but he is in this episode. The Pac-Man one was definitely artistic, but I would give this an 8 out of 10. If you're into gaming, you're into nerd culture like I am, I feel like you're going to find a lot of value into these episodes just for the eye candy that they provide. And if you're a fan of these projects, I feel like you're going to get a lot more out of it. Like, for example, I really enjoyed the Sifu one, Unreal Tournament. I've played that in the past, 40K, Pac-Man, and Armored Core, so I got a lot of value from that. This is definitely something made for gamers to enjoy, and yes, you can see them as long-form ads for these projects, but I feel like they did a really good job of highlighting these projects in their own way. So tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your opinion, but for me, definitely worth a watch if you like video games to, you know, enjoy this for a afternoon's worth. But that's it for me. Like, dislike, your choice. Bye.